The Situation Room is crowded, the clock is running, and the question on every table is the same. How do you finish a war without unleashing a larger one? Behind closed doors today, military planners laid out options that would, if approved, compress weeks of fighting into a short, decisive campaign aimed at crippling the remaining instruments of an adversary's warfighting capacity, missile launchers, leadership nodes, and selective pieces of infrastructure. The language in the briefing was stark. A short, powerful wave of strikes designed to remove the opponent's ability to threaten regional commerce and US forces and to shape the battlefield before any political deadline arrives. At the center of that plan is a new class of weapon described on the record as a hypersonic strike with long range and heavy payload. It was invoked not as a theoretical capability, but as an option on the president's desk, a tool that could reach deep into the theater and take out hardened targets at W1. How planners term standoff ranges. The promise of speed and surprise has obvious tactical appeal. The danger is strategic. The more you compress effects into a single blow, the higher the risk of miscalculation, of collateral damage, and of drawing in other states that have competing interests. Naval and air assets in the region have been operating at a high tempo. Aircraft carriers, amphibious ships, and surface escorts are arrayed to enforce embargoes, secure sea lines of communication, and provide strike options. Sailors and Marines aboard those ships are enforcing transit restrictions and inspecting vessels suspected of violating sanctions or delivering prohibited cargo. At the same time, strategic planners have briefed the president on blockade and seizure operations up to and including the seizure of critical choke points or even targeted facilities ashore. Those are not small undertakings. They require logistics, sustained force protection, and contingency planning. For asymmetry, frick, Etric retaliation, legally and politically, time is a central factor. There is a 60-day window in statute that governs the presence of US forces in hostilities without specific congressional authorization. Officials here argued that the clock has paused amid a declared ceasefire, a point that has now become a legal and political flashpoint. As one senior official stated plainly, "We are in a ceasefire right now, which our understanding means the 60-day clock pays or stops. In a ceasefire." That line, terse and categorical, frames the most immediate question for the White House. Does the resume of major operations require a fresh authorization from Congress, or can the president proceed on his own legal assessment? Members of Congress are listening and not in unison. Some lawmakers say force should not be extended without a clear public debate and vote. Others argue that waiting to secure authorization will cede the initiative to an enemy that has spent months adapting its tactics and hardening key assets. The disagreement is not merely procedural. It reflects a deeper split over whether the country is ready to support an expanded campaign and what a successful end state would actually look like. On the ground and on the sea, the calculus is no less fraught. A plan to seize or interdict naval traffic touches the livelihoods of commercial shippers and the economies of countries that depend on uninterrupted passage. The strait, a narrow corridor that channels a significant share of the world's seaborne energy exports, is a strategic choke point and a flashpoint where any misstep could spike global prices and test the resolve of allied navies. Planners are looking for partners. Multilateral buy-in would blunt accusations of unilateralism and spread the burden of risk. But effective coalitions are hard to assemble on short notice, and some potential partners are already hedging their commitments. Regionally, alliances are shifting in real time. Several stater tests that once relied on traditional energy routes are building pipelines and alternate routes to reduce vulnerability to maritime disruption. Military cooperation between regional powers is also changing. Shared intelligence exercises and the transfer of defensive systems are emerging in ways that reshuffle old lines. At the same time, global powers that have historically backed one side or another are watching cautiously. Their rhetoric is measured, their strategic moves are calculated. In this environment, tactical gains can be ephemeral if not translated into durable political outcomes. Inside the capital, the domestic political theatre is noisier than ever. Lawmakers and commentators argue about motives, competence, and the management of classified information. Accusations fly. Impropriety, profiteering, and political opportunism. One thread of that debate centers on whether private financial activity by officials or their associates created conflicts of interest at the moment today. Decisions were being made. Those are serious charges that demand transparent inquiries and congressional oversight. They also serve at times as rhetorical fuel for a broader, more partisan battle over the legitimacy of the mission itself. The human cost of the conflict is visible in every dispatch. Reports of casualties, damage to urban centers, and mass displacement are a backdrop to the strategic discussion. Military success, once measured solely in kinetic terms, is now understood as inseparable from efforts to protect civilians, maintain critical services, and preserve institutions. Questions of war crimes and rules of engagement surfaced in hearings and human rights briefings. Those are not academic debates. They shape public will and, in turn, the political calculus that determines whether sustained force is sustainable. A recurring theme in the public debate is the disconnect between battlefield claims and independent reporting. Officials on some sides have framed the fight as a decisive victory in progress, with the enemy described as leaderless, deprived of weapons, and unable to muster an effective response. Skeptics caution that battlefield narratives are incomplete, often crafted for domestic consumption, and rarely capture the adaptation that adversaries undertake. In wartime, information is a weapon. Controlling it can win hearts and minds, but overreach opens the door to credibility problems when reality diverges from rhetoric. Economic consequences are front and center. Energy markets are volatile. Supply disruptions are ensured by geopolitical risk premiums. Consumers feel the impact at the pump and in household budgets. At the same time, equity markets are responding to a mix of fear and resilience. One headline today noted a major market rally as investors priced in both defense spending and the prospect of a negotiated pause in the fighting. Employment numbers that show a still tight labor market complicate the political narrative. A strong jobs report can bolster support for bold policy choices, even as rising fuel costs erode disposable income. The intelligence question is hard and persistent. Planners say they have identified peripheral caches, missile platforms, and command centers that remain operational. There is also concern about the safeguard and dispersion of sensitive material. One option discussed in military briefings and framed by planners as an operational priority is securing nuclear-related material before it can be moved, hidden, or weaponized. The language used in the briefing was stark. We want to get the nuclear IT's way down there. You need excavators and everything, but we want to get it. We will take it one way or the other. We will get it. We will take it one way or the other. We will get it or we will take it. One way or the other. We will get it as though to escalation risk hangs over every choice. Seizing material or conducting strikes inside sovereign territory. Tory, even aimed at military targets, can trigger retaliatory attacks. Can trigger retaliatory attacks against forces, shipping, or energy infrastructure. Non-state actors allied to the adversary have shown a capacity for asymmetric retaliation, from missile and drone strikes to cyber operations that can affect critical infrastructure, far from the front lines. Each new capability deployed by one side invites countermeasures and, with them, unintended consequences. For allies watching from the periphery, the message is mixed. Some countries welcome a tougher stance and are prepared to participate in limited ways. Others fear being dragged into a protracted regional conflict or becoming targets themselves. International law, maritime rights, and the safety of commercial traffic are all part of the diplomatic calculus. None of them are easily reconciled with the operational urgency felt at the center of command. Within the country, the partisan lens shapes everything. Some lawmakers insist that the country cannot achieve anything lasting without the American people's broad support. America never succeeds in war unless the American people are behind it. One senator declared, a reminder that military outcomes are ultimately sustained by political consensus. Opponents counter that the case for war has not been sufficiently made, evidence of imminent threat, a clear strategy for the day after combat, and a transparent accounting of costs are all demanded before they will offer support. That debate spills into symbolic moments and sound bites, talk of past wars, cultural touchstones, and coded invective mixed with policy specifics in ways that complicate the national conversation. The rhetorical heat sometimes drowns out the sober details that matter most to commanders and families alike. As decisions move from the Situation Room to the Oval Office, The president faces a threefold judgment. Does he have the legal authority to proceed without explicit congressional approval? Will the military options he is offered achieve strategic aims without unacceptable costs? And can the nation sustain an escalation if it occurs? Those are not purely military questions. They are questions of law, diplomacy, and domestic politics that will define not only the immediate campaign, but the country's standing for years to come. In the theatre of war, uncertainty is the only constant. Planners can map likely enemy responses, estimate collateral effects, and postulate worst-case scenarios. But no map can fully capture the cascade of second and third-order consequences that flow from a bold military choice. The most dangerous moment is not the strike itself. It is the hour after, when adversaries, allies, and neutral parties all respond in ways that are difficult to predict. For the public, the stakes are tangible: safety, economic stability, and the question of whether the nation's actions abroad align with its values at home. For service members, the stakes are personal and immediate. For leaders, the stakes are legacy and responsibility. In the quiet before the decision, those competing interests press against one another. Legal counsel briefs, military planners outline options, diplomats warn of fallout, and families wait for answers. Whatever course is chosen, it must be accompanied by a clear statement of objectives, a sober accounting of risks, and a plan for returning to diplomacy and re-scrention once the kinetic phase ends. The choice to use force is always consequential. The choice to do so without a credible long-term political strategy risks converting a short, powerful campaign into a protracted, costly entanglement. Tonight, as decisions are finalized and messages are drafted, the country watches. Leaders will need to explain not only what they did, but why it had to be done, what success looks like, and how the costs will be managed. In a conflict measured in missiles, diplomacy, and headlines, clarity and accountability are the most potent instruments of SAS strategy. The coming days will test not just military plans, but the capacity of a democratic society to weigh risk, demand evidence, and govern responsibly in a time of war.